Welcome into Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Appreciate you joining us. On today's show, we will go over the latest Seattle Seahawks roster cuts as the roster has gone down from 90 to not quite 85, but 86. We'll explain that in just one moment. Before we do, we encourage you to share today's show and do so on Twitter. Tag me at Tyler Jones Live and use the hashtag Seahawks. And I have an incentive that we are doing for the first time ever here on Seahawks Today. If you tweet out the show and tag me, the first 10 people to do so are going to be entered to win a grand prize total of $10 here on Seahawks Today. Now that we're doing the live shows with the Super Chats, we actually have a budget on this program, so we can afford to give some money away back to the people of Seahawks Today. So, first 10, get entered to win $10, a big grand prize ahead. So share the show so you can possibly get a little bit richer and buy yourself a sandwich. All right, let's look at the Seahawks roster. Here's what I mean by it technically going to 86 at this point. They get an exemption because of outside linebacker Aaron Donkor, allowing them to be above the mandated 85 at this point compared to everybody else because he is on the International Player Pathway Program. But that meant the Seahawks had to move on from 4 different players via roster cuts today. They include Josh Valentine-Turner, a cornerback, defensive tackle Antonio Valentino, offensive guard Eric Wilson, and wide receiver Deontez Alexander. Now, the other roster moves that were made in part the last 24 hours include the trade that we told you about yesterday for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside at tight end, wide receiver Cody Thompson at the IR spot, and then getting on the injured reserve list, that is. And then offensive tackle Liam Ryan got activated. He passed his physical, the rookie from Washington State, able to go. And then, as we mentioned, Donkor, the linebacker, is on the international pathway. So, basically, it's a situation where, hey, not much college football at the international level, and it's nice PR for the NFL that they get to add that extra roster player of sorts. So, with that said, that's where the roster stands at the moment at 86 players for the Seahawks. So how would you grade what John Schneider and Pete Carroll did over the last several hours to put this roster together as is right now? Put a letter grade on it. Let me know in the comments section. Type A, B, C, D, or F, and put your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think they made the right moves with the cuts and the additions that they made? Let me know in the comments section below. It is our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break. If so, might as well take advantage of it and get your votes in. A, B, C, D, or F. You make the call. All right, so let's break down these depth charts hand in hand right now, beginning with the cornerback spot. With the cut of Josh Valentine-Turner, you can see it doesn't really change a whole lot for this position for the Seahawks here. Right now, Sidney Jones and Artie Burns are your starting 2 corners with Justin Coleman at the nickel, but Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen are right on their heels, as well as Trey Brown. Both those guys got the chance, Bryant and Woolen did, to start the first preseason game, with the Seahawks being a little shorthanded at corner. Did not necessarily play great, but they'll have another opportunity ahead on Thursday night against the Bears in the Seahawks' second preseason game. Let's take a look at the defensive line now. Now, you move on from Antonio Valentino, and here's where things look. Not a whole lot of changes there, as you can see. Still led by Shelby Harris, Al Woods, Poona Ford leading that group there right now. What will be interesting to see, I think the player that we all have circled of this group is L.J. Collier, because he has been talked about for months on end if the Seahawks would trade him or release him. He had a very good showing in OTAs and in minicamp, and so that's the guy of this group that I think is going to be the one that everybody keeps their eye on if he'll be on that 53-man roster when it's all said and done. The former Seahawks top pick from just a few years ago. So, your turn to be the GM now. Name a player the Seahawks should cut next. There are more cuts coming, and we'll get you the timeline of where that goes in just a little while from right now. But Let me know in the comment section a name you think the Seahawks should move on from. It's okay to name a couple players, too. In fact, encourage it. Be honest with me. Name somebody the Seahawks should move on from that should not be on this 53-man roster when it's all said and done. Got a great deal that we're offering Seahawk fans. Not only are we giving you the chance to win $10 today, but also a chance to buy DK Metcalf jerseys. Look, we know that DK is going to be with the Seahawks for a very long time now. That's evident, so you might as well go ahead and get your Seattle Seahawks jerseys for DK Metcalf. They come in neon, every color you can think of for DK Metcalf, folks. And the only place to get them is at chatsports.com/DK Jersey. Look, these things are flying off the shelves fast. Better get yours now before football season. Chatsports.com/DK Jersey. I promise you, you will not regret it. All right, let's look at the offensive line for Seattle now. With the changes that the Seahawks made, they let go of Eric Wilson, the offensive guard, and Liam Ryan gets activated. He can pass a physical, so that's good to see that he can run and lift weights and all that. And so now the offensive line, as it stands, you can see with those changes, doesn't change anything for Seattle with that starting five. That has no effect with these changes that were made. Ryan slips in as the third-string left tackle competing for that spot. And if you recall, he and Lucas played together at Washington State. So you're looking at, 3 rookie tackles for the Seahawks group. Pretty fascinating to see how that will all unfold there with that position. Also, let's look at the wide receivers now. The Seahawks let go of Alexander, and he was at the very tail end of the wide receiver threshold. And Cody Thompson goes on IR now with the injury that he suffered. And so with that, you can see that for this Seattle Seahawks receiving core, it's still the same song that we've been telling you for the last several weeks, that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett lead your way. But then after that, this contest is wide open. Freddie Swain's impressed at points throughout camp. We saw Young had a good night in the preseason game last week, so it's all up in the air when it comes to that wide receiver position at this point in time. The tight end spot, let's look at that one for you right now, folks. As you can see, Noah Fant and Will Dissly with the infamous or on the depth chart. I don't expect that to last for long. I expect Noah Fant to be the undisputed tight end number 1 when it's all said and done, with Dissly as your number 2. Not a knock on Dissly. He's just not Noah Fant. And right now, the latest depth chart that we've seen shows Arcega-Whiteside as the number 5 tight end. So even with Whiteside coming to Seattle via trade, that doesn't guarantee a damn thing that he's going to make this final 53-man roster. I mean, the Seahawks in that trade, giving up Hugo Amadi, was a guy that was going to get cut. They were literally just about set to waive him yesterday. And so now bringing in Arcega-Whiteside is a guy that for Seattle, they're essentially just giving another chance for instead of a player they were going to move on from. So with that said, will Whiteside make the final roster for the Seahawks? Let me know in the comment section. Type Y for yes, type in for no, if he will make the final roster for Seattle when it's all said and done. And if he does make the roster, you know that we're going to break down the final 53-man roster right here, nowhere else but Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. We got live watch parties for you, live shows, breaking news. The bosses have said that no live show this week. No, we have not canceled Seahawks Today live after one episode. We'll be back next week, but we have a watch party this Thursday. So you will not want to miss out on that for the Bears game. We'll get started about 8 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll have post-game coverage and interact with you throughout the night. So turn on your notifications so you can be here for all the watch parties, live shows, breaking news, and everything in between right here on Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. YouTube.com/Seahawks TV. Subscribe now. Let's look at the linebacking core now with Donkor on the IPPP distinction. You can see that this linebacking core right now, where it stands, Darrell Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu hold down the fort on the outside. Brooks and Barton as the inside linebacker spots. The Seahawks are going to need to see a lot more from Cody Barton after a pitiful performance in that preseason game I'd be very interested to see if Barton has another bad night on Thursday in this Bears game, if they will make a move and try to find another inside linebacker of sorts. That will be somebody to watch for to see if they go another direction there. But nonetheless, that is a look at the Seahawks roster as things stand right now. You may be asking yourself, well, Tyler, what's the next deadline for cuts? Well, today, the 16th, we went from 90 to 85, or in the Seahawks case, technically 86. On August 23rd, that's next week, the roster goes from 85 to 80. So 5 more guys get cut. And then on August 30th, that is the end-all, be-all day, folks. August 30th, the roster goes all the way from 80 to 53. It's that day that you find out if you are a have or a have-not, if you belong in the NFL or if you belong in the XFL. That's the day that we find out, August 30th. Very important date to keep in mind there. So that's the timeline of things. We'll be covering it all here on Seahawks Today. Before we go, something to keep in mind with the Seahawks here is that you go down to 53, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this roster stays as is, right? That other teams will be releasing guys, and there could be somebody that you see that you like better out there. So who's a player that you should sign? Here's what I mean. One thing to keep in mind by this. Let me know in the comment section somebody that the Seahawks should sign, because if someone else says, we don't want that guy for our 53, but if the Seahawks see that as a need and say, we want that guy instead, then that becomes a whole nother factor in what is the final number at 53. So we'll be following all that. If there's a signing as well, that could also factor into the final 53, and we'll be all over it here on Seahawks Today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.